Want to welcome everybody to our iNaturalist webinar here on the Community Science in Action. For all of you listening in, and if you're wanting to look at this again afterwards or share this around, this webinar is being recorded, and others we've delivered as well can be found on CWF's website. The recording for this one should be available in a few days. Easiest way to find that is if you just Google CWF webinars, but I can drop a link to that in the chat again a little later on. And I would like to begin by acknowledging with immense gratitude for sure that the land on which the Canadian Wildlife Federation is located and where I live, work, and play is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin people have inhabited and cared for these lands long before today and long before we've been here. So I want to take this time to be very grateful for their care and show our gratitude and respect and appreciation for that and the land that it provides us. So I'm James Paget. I'm Species at Risk and Biodiversity Specialist at the Canadian Wildlife Federation. I help manage the iNaturalist platform here in Canada. I also carry out some on-the-ground species recovery work and a few other tasks like that at CWF. Acacia Frempong-Manso also works here at the Canadian Wildlife Federation. She is the iNaturalist Engagement Coordinator. She's originally from Brampton. She spent her last 6 years in Ottawa, completing both a master's and PhD in biology at Carleton University. Biodiversity, conservation, and shoreline erosion are some of her passions and her focus on her PhD right now. Rachel Fortier is the Species at Risk Recovery Coordinator for the Species Recovery Branch at the Toronto Zoo, which is home to the Adopt a Pond wetland conservation program. She has a passion and love for wetland species and ecosystems, working closely with reptiles and amphibians and mostly turtles. In recent years, especially in her role as a coordinator, she assists in the Adopt a Pond conservation project, including Blanding's turtle work, head starting program, Eastern milk snake monitoring, and the Ontario Turtle Tally and Frog Watch community science projects. And she's excited to share her passion for community science and discuss how iNaturalist platform can help with these programs. Couple of logistical things. The chat is only on for people to chat with Rachel, Acacia, and I as the panelists. It's turned off to chat with amongst each other. So we're going to use that just for technical issues. If you can't hear something or if there's connection issues, then you can use the chat to connect with us. So we're going to use the Q&A at the bottom or top of your screen, however you have it set up, to pose questions. So you put your questions in the Q&A. Please put them as we go. We'll get to them all at the end, but as they come up in your head, you can post the questions then. I'll compile them and then put them to Rachel and Acacia at the end of it. If you're having audio or video problems, check obviously that Zoom has access to your settings, your speakers, headphones. Often if for whatever reason you get it's not working, often you can leave and you can rejoin using that same link and you'll jump right back in. And if for any reason we get cut off, please just go back to that link, click and join back in. We'll get the webinar started up again. It's happened once before where we lost power and everybody got booted out and we had to just kind of all sign back on. And lastly, but also very importantly, for those that are hearing impaired, there's a live transcription option with Zoom. So you can click on that to choose the option to show subtitles. And lastly, before I turn it over to Acacia, just a little bit about CWF. We are one of Canada's largest conservation organizations, undertaking projects in conservation across the country. And our main mission, our raison d'être, is to conserve and inspire the conservation of Canada's wildlife and habitats for the use and enjoyment of all. We do this through a number of ways. A lot of it is engaging people, the youth, and through programs like Community Science, iNaturalist Canada, education programs like Wild Outside and Canadian Conservation Corps. We also have specific kind of on-the-ground conservation projects in the marine and terrestrial environments, many of which target a number of different species at risk as well. And with that, I will pass it over to Acacia and let her talk to you a little bit about iNaturalist before we jump into the Adopt Upon program.
Perfect. I will just wait to share my screen. Okay, and everybody can
Perfect.
see
We
my
got it.
screen, right? Perfect. All
Yeah.
right, thank you, James, for the introduction. So as James mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit more about iNaturalist Canada. So what exactly is iNaturalist Canada? It's a platform where you can record and share species observations while also connecting with others and get help with ID from the community of over 800,000 naturalists. And it's a really, really unique tool in the sense that it helps people get kind of photos they take out of their phone and kind of onto a platform where they can be used to make conservation decisions. Scientists and researchers like James can't be everywhere all at once, and they can't really track all data across the country. And this platform really allows people to kind of take photos and upload them to a platform where researchers can actually use this so the data can be accessible for conservation decisions. And it's also a really cool tool if you're just interested in seeing what others are taking photos of around you. If you're curious to know what bird species is in your neighborhood or what species at risk is in your neighborhood, it's a really, really great platform where you can do that. So iNaturalist Canada is a part of a global network known as iNaturalist.org, and there are over 65 countries who have their own specific iNaturalists. And it's just an amazing tool to see how we can all fit into the global network of iNaturalist itself. One reason why we promote iNaturalist Canada in particular is because it's focused specifically here in Canada. It will help kind of zoom in your searches to Canadian specific things. And another benefit is iNaturalist Canada is bilingual. So it's offered in English and French. So you can kind of use it in the language that you prefer. And it just helps you get a better understanding of what's going on in Canada and the species that are present here in Canada. And with that, I will stop sharing quickly and I will turn it over to Rachel, who will talk more about the Adopt Upon project. All here on iNaturalist.
Thank you, Acacia. I just will work on sharing my screen here. And we'll get into presenter mode. Okay, awesome. I can't see anybody, so if anybody can't see my screen, please let me know.
Looks perfect. Thanks.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, guys. So thank you both for the great introductions. My name is Rachel, and I am from the Adopt Upon program and species recovery branch at the Toronto Zoo. And I just wanted to start off with a little land acknowledgement for the area that I'm currently on in Scarborough in Toronto, Canada, Ontario, Canada. And we like to acknowledge that the land that we are on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. And just for those of you who may not already know, the Adopt Upon Wetland Conservation Program at the Toronto Zoo is part of the Species Recovery Branch, where we work to design and deliver impactful conservation-focused research, restoration, and outreach that highlights the importance of saving sensitive wetland species and their habitats. So as slightly already mentioned, one of our main projects is the Blanding's Turtle Head Starting Project that we run to help recover a functionally extinct population that lives right here around the Toronto Zoo of Blanding's turtles. We're working, trying to work with the Head Start program to recover that population directly in this area. We also work with various other reptile and amphibian species. We do some monitoring, like mentioned, for the eastern milk snake, also do some amphibian monitoring from time to time, and then also do lots of different types of outreach and run different other projects like our community science projects, which is what we are focusing on today. So with the Adopt a Pond program, we have two different community science projects that can all work hand in hand with each other. One is the Ontario Turtle Tally Project, and the other is Frogwatch Ontario. So Ontario Turtle Tally, just for a little bit of background for those who don't already know, is an Adopt a Pond-led initiative, which is an inventory project where observations are collected from all over the province of turtles wherever they are seen. This project was started in 2003, so we've been doing it for quite a long time, and originally started with people expressing interest in participating in the program, us mailing out packages for people to monitor for turtles in their local areas with data sheets, and then them mailing those back. And then inputting data and collecting that into our larger database with everything going to the Natural Heritage Information Center, the provincial database at the end of the year. And with the advances of technology since 2003, in 2018, we decided to try out using an app, which worked very well for a really long time, with a corresponding web page, so people could upload their observations directly to that app, which then everything was manually vetted or verified by Adopt a Pond staff. And now we're really excited to also be available on iNaturalist, which we started this year. And a little different from Adopt a Pond is our Frog Watch project, which is actually a national effort coordinated by Environment and Climate Change Canada, or ECCC, through their Nature Watch programs. And we, as Adopt a Pond, are the coordinators of the Ontario chapter of that bigger kind of Frog Watch project since 1999. And again, worked the same way, where people would get packages, fill out manual data sheets, email those, or mail those back to us, and then kind of transitioned into using our app and our web pages as well. So for a long time, it was kind of like two separate projects, one app. So it was very easy to participate interchangeably in both projects. And now, again, also available on iNaturalist, which can still be somewhat said, because both projects are available under our umbrella project of the Adopt a Pond project, and then they both have their own traditional projects within there. And we've decided to actually, at the end of this year, we'll exclusively have our projects available on iNaturalist, because we've various reasons for this kind of transition. One, upkeeping of an app is very costly, and also for us having to manually vet is very time consuming. So we want to use those resources of all those other community scientists and experts out there to help us work through that project, also get us a little bit more accurate information, and also be able to expand our reach to be a little bit more accessible to a larger group of people. And I'll just make a little note that anything you see in my slides in terms of reptile or amphibian photos are all submitted from our community science, current community science volunteers. So just like to add that little tidbit. And I want to make a couple important notes about our projects, the kind of things that I want to look out for, which I think Casey is going to talk a little bit about as well, is that these are traditional projects, which might be a little different than some other projects if you already use iNaturalist, where we are asking people to manually add to our project, so it doesn't automatically add to Ontario Turtle Tally if you add an observation in Ontario. But we also want to we want a little bit extra information to help make our data that we're collecting a little bit more robust, and help us, make it a little bit more accurate as well. So for example, if somebody were to take a picture of a log full of painted turtles and you can't actually pick out each individual turtle out of there, then you can click the drop down of individuals present and be able to kind of indicate approximately how many individuals there are there, or the type of habitat they're in. So whether they're on a road or they're in a wetland or in your backyard, and that all helps us just learn a little bit more about those habits and things and areas and habitats, critical habitats that those species or individuals are using, which helps us just learn a little bit more. And more information is always the better. And again, I think Casey will talk about it a little bit as well, but because we're talking about reptiles and amphibians, specifically turtles and frogs and toads here in Ontario, many of those are species at risk, which have their locations can be very sensitive. And so we do encourage people to either obscure or make their locations private, which again, we'll go in a little bit more detail about as we go on. But we also would really love to have that access to that information to make our database and our data more accurate. So it would be great that if you guys could give us permissions to do so. And as you join the project, there are some options. So whatever option works best for you, click to give us that permission so we can then use that data a little bit more effectively into the future. And so I also just want to highlight some of the reasons why we have community science and why we have these community scientists and why we have these projects, which has slightly been highlighted already. But we can't be everywhere at once. It's a very big province of Ontario, and there's a lot of reptiles and amphibians across the province. And so having community scientists who are able to dedicate just even a little bit of time out of their life to go and report these observations that they may already be seeing, but just add those to our projects, helps us gain more information about these individuals, species, and populations, specifically for those, or especially for those species at risk, reptiles and amphibians that we have here in the province. And having a large, robust, and continually growing database like that we can have through community science projects helps us to be able to identify population health, population changes, and then changes in their health or their distribution, whether that's something that we're identifying on our end from things that we are changing, or whether that's data we can provide to other organizations, government, and other requests that come in, people who are kind of analyzing or looking for those changes that our data can then go and support. Then that can also help for things like species at risk assessments for species in the province at either the provincial or the federal level as well. So being able to have that growing database is super pivotal and important to be able to support those data for those kind of bigger scale conservation needs. And again, maintaining that large data set just allows us to be able to do that more accurately as we go through time. And then also it's a super fun and easy and affordable way to get to be engaged in your community and in the local conservation in your area. So I also just don't have too much time, but I just want to kind of have an example of how community science data that's been submitted to Turtle Tally and Frogwatch have been able to be used for actual conservation impact. An example of that is the bigger conservation project that was done over the past few years in Kingston, where we had a request from various organizations, including Turtles Kingston, which is a community group, and the City of Kingston, and other organizations like EcoCare, which is a road ecology organization. And they were looking for more data than what they had to help support the need for road mortality mitigation on a major road in Kingston. Anybody who knows the area knows Princess Street's a pretty busy, large street, and it bypasses right through a significant wetland. And they just needed some little bit more data to prove that this was a hotspot for reptile and amphibian crossing, and then also, unfortunately, mortality, in order to get the approval from the city to go forward with this project. And because we did have data, we were able to contribute that, and that, along with data from other partners, was able to be used to support that need. The project was approved, and 2.5 kilometers of fencing was installed in 2022 to funnel these individuals or various individuals in the area under a culvert or an eco passage to help prevent them from being up on the road. And this was an almost just under $1 million project, and was deemed one of the largest conservation initiatives in 2022. So this is just one example of kind of a larger municipal level mitigation that was able to move forward because of support from community scientists. We also often have requests from concerned community members about a particular area where they believe is a hotspot, but don't necessarily have the support to a hotspot for road mortality, but not necessarily have the support to go forward with some sort of mitigation, with signage or something like that. And so having data available to for people to use to help support the need for these kind of mitigation efforts is super important, and has shown to be effective in various cases, and there's too much time. So all that to be said, I just want to highlight that contributing to community science is really important for the continued conservation. Every community member has the potential to support positive ecological action, even if it maybe doesn't seem like so much at the time that you're just taking a picture and submitting it to an app. but that the data that is collected through community science can be very impactful, and the continued need for that is there, and the continued support for that will help us continue to increase our conservation impact for species at risk, reptiles, and amphibians in the province of Ontario moving forward, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you. And I just wanted to highlight this little quote here that we really like to say, that all of the best heroes are ordinary people who make themselves extraordinary, because it's really important to acknowledge that people contributing to these projects are taking time out of their lives to do so, and sometimes really dedicate people there. That means that it's gas in their car and other kind of commitments like that to be a very active community scientist. And so we appreciate that and just want to highlight that even those little things that you're doing in your everyday life can have a big impact. So thank you. And I will be around for questions after, but I'm going to pass it back over to Acacia.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I will just get back to sharing my screen. Okay, I think my screen is back up and sharing now. So Rachel mentioned that the specific kind of project they use for their Adopt a Pond programs for both Ontario Turtle Tally and Frog Watch Ontario is a traditional project. So as she mentioned, that's a project where you have to do a little bit more work. There are two other types of projects on iNaturalist, and I will quickly explain them because making observations is a really, really great way to contribute and to contribute to iNaturalist. But it's not the only way to contribute. If you are passionate about a specific species or a specific area, you are welcome to make a project where you can encourage others in your area or around you to kind of upload based off of the location or upload based off of a specific species. So another project that Rachel didn't touch on was a collection project. So that's a project where you set the parameters, where you set the area, you set the species, you can choose a specific species, like if you wanted to do map turtles. You can set all species, and basically a collection project is people don't have to join the project for the observation to count. They simply just have to make an observation that meets the criteria that you have set, and it will automatically be pulled in. So it's a really great way if you're just curious to know what exists in a park that you live in, or how much species data for a particular species exists. Another type of project that we have is an umbrella project. And umbrella projects are simply like collection projects or traditional projects, but you can compare them across different projects. So a great example of this is if you maybe potentially participated in the City Nature Challenge this year. It's a challenge that originated in California, but Canada, we participate in that. And here at CWF, we lead that initiative. And we have a collection project where we have each city that signed up for City Nature Challenge under an umbrella project. And you can see how the cities fare up against each other. So you can see the observations, the number of observers, the number of species. So projects are really great tool, and they will depend on what need you have to collect data, to inform citizens. It's really kind of up to you in terms of what project you want to choose. So if you are thinking about creating a project, we do have more information on iNaturalist.ca where you can kind of look to see what project would be a better fit for you. And next slide. Like I mentioned, there are many ways to get involved. Just uploading observations is really, really great, but you can organize a BioBlitz. If there is already a project that exists that you are really passionate about, you can organize a BioBlitz within the geographic region of that project or the specific species of that project, and you can encourage people to get observations up. You can also get involved in City Nature Challenge. It's a really great way to showcase the great biodiversity that we have here in Canada, while also kind of helping researchers gather that data about what species are doing, where they're moving, and trying to understand what's happening in our changing climate. Another thing that's really, really important is there are thousands and thousands of observations on iNaturalist, but sometimes they take a little bit longer to ID. So hosting identification parties can be really helpful in helping somebody ID a monarch or ID a turtle or ID an insect. It really, if you're confident in your abilities, you can do the specific kind of animals, but if you're unsure, you can start with maybe things that you know for certain, like a blue jay. You can also develop local guides or how-tos for your specific area to help people around you kind of get more comfortable with taking photos and how to get the best photo for that specific kind of species. All of that really, really helps. Again, you can also organize a speaker series if you have a group or a network that's really passionate about using iNaturalist and you want to kind of invite somebody to speak about specific things they're looking for in a photo in iNaturalist, or just kind of a general understanding of that species. It's really, really great to kind of do that. And you can kind of use this data to make a difference. All data on iNaturalist is downloadable, so you can download all the data from a project and you can kind of make maps. They kind of already generate some maps for you. You can see kind of trends between the years if you wanted to compare turtle number observations from last year to this year. It's a really great tool to kind of see what's going on around you and how it can be used to inform future conservation here in Canada. So why is this so valuable? Here's kind of an example that I'm going to walk you guys through as to why it's valuable and why you should continue to, or to start to upload observations to iNaturalist. So here's kind of an example of an observation that was made of an elm zigzag sawfly. At first, you probably like, it's just a photo of a leaf that's been eaten out. Not that special, but this person thought it was interesting and they decided to upload it to iNaturalist. And this is where it kind of got really interesting. So people started commenting and they were like, I've seen this before. And actually a German entomologist, he actually identified this. And it was found that this might have been this was the first kind of observation here in North America. And it was really exciting. And it was starting to kind of grab a lot of people's attention. And people were tagging other people like researchers who could understand that this is a really, really big idea and that they were actually interested in this. And essentially, it got into the right hands, and then a team went out and they actually went to go look, and they actually found kind of more observations in that area, and they kind of actually collected a few larvae and an adult, and it was really, really important because now we are here and there are 331 observations because of this. So it kind of sparked interest, and everyone was like, oh, I probably might have seen that, but I had no idea what that pattern was. I just assumed it was an interesting leaf and they left it. But now that it's gotten more attention, people are starting to notice, wow, this is the elm zigzag sawfly. And that can be really, really cool. And it's this kind of information that can actually really kind of spark people to take more photos when they're out on walks, or to kind of maybe take a second and look. And this research is also just really, really important for researchers to understand once something's there, like kind of what the population looks like and how they can get a grips on it. Another example specifically to turtles as to why this is so valuable is like, this is some of the data from the Adopt a Pond project specifically for the turtles. All of our species of turtles in Canada are at risk, and data is precious and we can't be everywhere at once, and turtles can sometimes be elusive. So by you uploading observations of a species, specifically here, the blanding turtle, it can be really, really helpful to understand why this is important, what their population numbers look like, where are their nesting sites. And you probably think, oh, but a photo of a turtle or turtle eggs aren't really valuable to anybody, but they are. They help us identify areas where there are high turtle traffics, where turtles are getting injured because they are crossing the road, and that can help us implement better signage to let people know, hey, this is a potential turtle crossing when you are traveling on this road. Please drive with caution. If you do see a turtle and you feel comfortable helping them, please help them cross the road, but also just be cautious. Also, it can help us identify where turtles are laying eggs. If a turtle is laying eggs on a particular area that's vulnerable, it can allow a team to kind of go out and put a nest protector, which can be seen here, to kind of protect those eggs. And this information is really, really valuable for us because we can get out in the field, because we can see observations, and we can kind of start to make those early interventions. So quickly, I'm just going to go over like how you would upload an observation, both on the app as well as on the website. You really don't have to be an expert to use iNaturalist. You can simply use the app, or you can use the website where you drag and drop these photos. It has an image recognition software that can help you identify the species. So don't feel like you have to know everything to use iNaturalist. It's okay sometimes to just leave it at the species level and have somebody help you out. It's really, really easy, both from the app, you snap the photo, and the AI will kind of help you take a pretty good guess of what it is. And it's okay, like I mentioned, to just leave it general and have somebody help you out. And the more confidence you get, you can build up those skills. Another way I want to kind of contribute is, it's a way that's underutilized on iNaturalist, is the annotation. So if you were on the website, because this is unfortunately only available on the website, one really cool thing that you can do is do annotations. And these annotations kind of indicate things like dead or alive, evidence of life, life stage, sex. And these will differ based off of the species. So you won't have the same one for a snake as you would for a plant. And these are really valuable because researchers can actually filter their observations to include these specific things. So if they only wanted butterflies and moths, but they only wanted them at the caterpillar stage, it would be really helpful for them to easily kind of withdraw and extract that data. So if in winter you're not as motivated to go outside and take observations, it can be really valuable for you to just spend some time, if you're confident in a specific species or even doing the dead or alive aspect, to kind of identify that and help researchers kind of get that data more easily. And you're probably wondering after today, how can I do more for turtle conservation or frog conservation? But I kind of feel overwhelmed because I'm not really sure where to start in terms of how to take good pictures or how to do this or that. We have a lot of helpful resources on iNaturalist.ca. Here at CWF, we've created these kind of how-to guides to kind of help you get you started on that journey in terms of what would be a good observation for iNaturalist, what kind of things should you consider, what kind of angle should you get the photo, so that it really helps get that kind of ID. And we have a plethora of resources available for people to use on that front. And lastly, I just want to talk about being a responsible iNat member. Observing sensitive wildlife from a safe distance is always really, really important. Also, you should be aware of your surroundings when you're out in nature and you're specifically going to make observations for iNaturalist.ca. If you do kind of come into contact with an animal that is in distress, the best bet is to contact your local wildlife rehab to kind of help get the help that it needs. For example, here, because this is a presentation about turtles as well as frogs, if you want to help a turtle cross the road, the best advice that I could offer is to help them cross in the direction that they are heading, because turtles can be very, very stubborn. But don't bait or feed wildlife. And also only help wildlife if you feel comfortable. If you are not comfortable holding a turtle, there are alternatives like the one seen here, using a tennis racket to kind of help the turtle cross the road. But always do what's best for you as well. If you don't feel comfortable or safe doing so, it's okay to kind of leave the animal and to upload the photo onto iNaturalist. And that is kind of all I have. And I guess we could probably take some questions if people have questions about specific locations and things like that. I'm happy to kind of answer that as well.
I was on mute. Thank you, Casey and Rachel, for the overview as well. A couple of questions came in asking a bit more details about the Adopt a Pond project in iNaturalist and kind of how that works, and whether it's Ontario only or if there's other areas that these types of things have been established. So I think Rachel is set. She can share her screen and kind of walk you through what the project looks like and what, as Casey was saying, this is what a traditional project looks like in specific data fields that they've set up that allow people to gather a little bit more kind of value added information about an observation, as opposed to just, which is a valuable photo location, but to have like a little more information about that actual observation. And to reiterate, this is kind of an example of a great project that's happening, and it's Ontario specific, but the same kind of notion of the value of these observations getting into iNaturalist that can then be transferred on to researchers is Canada and worldwide. So just because this is one example of Ontario, I think anybody listening from across the country, getting this observational data into iNaturalist, whether there's an Adopt a Pond or Turtle Tally or Frog Watch project, this information still goes to researchers like the conservation data centers that are provincial, basically keeping track of the at-risk species in Canada. So the data does get through to others. And similarly, when we have a look at this project, and as Acacia was saying, anybody that's connected with an organization or wants to go out on their own and create a turtle project on iNaturalist, that's definitely something that that you can consider. CWF does also have a Canada-wide project on iNaturalist. It's called Help the Turtles. And we're collecting all turtle observations across the country, not with as fine detail as the Adopt Upon program is, but also at least to gather kind of those turtle observations. So I'll stop there and let Rachel kind of show us a little bit more about the project and the workings of it.
Sure. Let's see if it'll let me share my screen. I think I can just share the tab, so I think that will work best. Okay, let me know if you guys can see my tab. Okay, awesome. So yeah, I'll go through a little bit about kind of how the project works and how you can submit. Now, on the web browser, it is going to look a lot different than on your phone, and even the apps between like an iPhone and an Android or a Google phone or whatever are going to look a little different as well. But in general, all the same aspects are typically available. So yeah, I'll just kind of show you guys a little bit about how it works. So I've got our project, our umbrella project page open. So the nice thing about having both of these traditional projects under an umbrella project is nice that we can kind of see a comparison here. So we can see that we've had a nice even 600 observations of turtles so far to the project. So that's not necessarily this year, but it's to the project as a whole. And that's just about double the frogs that we have. We often get a question about why we have so many more turtle observations than frog observations. And I think part of that is generally turtles are often a little bit easier to see in general. You're out on a hike, you see a bunch of turtles up on a log. It's much easier to grab a photo than, you know, the frogs that are kind of very more camouflaged and hidden and things like that. In the spring, they're much easier to hear. So we get a lot more of audio submissions that way of frogs as well, which I can go over how to do that as well. But that's kind of, you know, the gist of that. So you can kind of see a little bit overview. We also have a journal, which is really cool that you can kind of keep an eye out if you're in Ontario. For example, we've posted about that we're having this webinar. We have a mailing list as well that if you've joined the project that you can sign up for. If you join and participate, that we sometimes have special events and things like that, that you can join that mailing list that way. So I will go to, I'm actually going to go to Frog Watch because I have a photo which I think has already been submitted, but I'll do kind of like a mock submission so we can kind of see how it works. So here it's nice and easy on the web page that I can just go add observation and it'll bring me to this page. And now it looks a little overwhelming, but when you're on your phone, it's going to be much more simple. But what I can do is I can add my photo, choose a file, and I'm going to add this photo. And the cool thing about iNaturalist as well is that if you have enough information along with that photo, like you have the location and the date and all those kind of things, that it uses kind of like an AI to help you identify that individual as well, which is a nice kind of added benefit of using iNaturalist in this way, is that even if you don't know what that species is, it's going to be fairly easy for you to figure out, or at least narrow down to even a genus or a family or a group of animals that it thinks it is, and then the broader iNaturalist community can help you hone in and actually do that identification. So for this, there wasn't because I've uploaded it this way, there's not a built-in location information, but if you do it on your phone, it often will add that. But if it's not, I just want to zoom in and say kind of where I was generally. So let's go to the zoo. We'll just say that it was down here. But yeah, the nice thing about taking photos through iNaturalist and things like that, even if you take the photo within the app, then it has all that information readily available and gets you really accurate location information. So I'll put that as my location. And I can put that I saw I don't know if you guys could see the photo, but it was a northern leopard frog. So I can add that there. And then I can add the date. Let's say I saw it. I don't know the exact date, but this is just kind of a sample. Let's say I saw it on July 13th. Here I can add any notes as well that I want to add. But in order to add this to the project, I'm going to scroll down. And because I've already added to FrogWatch before, it's kind of added here as well. But there will be a place for you kind of option to put which project if you would like to add it to a project. You can also obscure or privatize. So this is something that I talked about earlier. So if it's a species at risk, we encourage everybody to kind of obscure that. So when the general public is kind of looking at this information, it'll put it within a random place within a certain kilometer buffer around the actual point. And if you make it private, then nobody else is actually going to be able to see that. Some species automatically are obscured or automatically private based on their species at risk status, but it might be a good idea to do that either way. But again, hopefully giving us the permission to see those observations is always great. So again, you can see here that FrogWatch is kind of already up and ready to go. So I can say, yes, I observed this turtle and this frog in the wild. And for frog or toad abundance, I can put, so I saw frogs and toads, but I didn't hear them. I can put that individuals could be counted, and I could differentiate well between the number of individuals that were there. Could kind of tell some, but there were still maybe some more individuals out there that I couldn't necessarily count, or there was just a full chorus of overlapping, so the actual number of individuals is not able to be known. So you can add that. If you know the temperature of the water, temperature of air, that's great. None of this is required to be added. It's the whenever that added value information is able to be added is great. And habitat as well is something we really like to know, especially if the individual is on a road, and that helps us flag us. So when we get requests for observations within a certain area as well, us being able to filter for individuals that are actually on a road is really, really easy, or is really helpful. So knowing that kind of habitat that they're using is great. And then I can add anything else into my sighting description. And I think this also looks a little different because I can still kind of manipulate and add fields based on the fact that I'm in the Adopt a Pond project and on the Adopt a Pond iNaturalist. And I also, even on my personal, I'm like a admin for the project. So your page might look a little bit different than this, but all of this information will be there and will be available. So I'm not actually going to add this, but I'm going to go back to the project, and I'm going to go to look at our observations. We'll go here, and I will just show you guys an example of an observation of an American toad. And so this is a submission that one of our community science members added. They knew it was an American toad, and we can either go in and agree or disagree. So if I actually thought that it was maybe a different species that we have in our Ontario, which is a Fowler's toad, which it's not, based on various different things in the location that it's in, I could though go and then give a different suggestion and also maybe leave some comments. And you can also see here that for this individual, great sum is that not even the individual who posted it, but somebody else came in and added some of those annotations, and that you can either agree or disagree. So they were able, even just from the photo, to know that that individual was alive. The evidence of the individual is that there's an organism itself. But let's say you saw a turtles and you saw a predated dug up turtle nest, and all you saw was eggs. You could put that like eggs were part of that evidence that you saw. And you also, they know from this photo and the size that it's a juvenile, and so you can add those life stages, and if you know the sex and things like that. And then another option is also that you, even after you've posted something, you can go back and add it to a project. And so this person actually, it's a great example about how one observation is being able to contribute to multiple places at once. And so they said they've added it to our Adopt a Pond umbrella project, and then also because it's in FrogWatch, but also have added it to the Ontario.
Oh, I think we just lost Rachel.
I think we did. Oh,
Rachel, you still there? Okay, I think she was kind of wrapping that up. Maybe her internet dropped. Oh, we got you back, but you're on mute.
Great. Hello.
Yeah. Hey.
Where
Perfect.
were we at when I got cut out?
Just that last bit where you were showing that the different projects that the one observation was a part of.
Perfect. That's pretty much it. I was probably rambling on a little bit more than needed anyways, but just saying that, yeah, like in the way that you're able to contribute or add, and the way that it's prompted to add to those projects will be different depending on what platform, like whether you're using a web page or your Android or your iPhone. But in general, all of those options will be there.
Yeah. And as Rachel said, I find it actually easier in the app because once you select the project, those extra fields that she was showing that has the like water temperature and other habitat information,
Mhm.
those all just show up as drop down options within the app once you click added to that project. So it's actually quite easy and it's all kind of right there. It's a little less overwhelming, I find, than that page that we saw on the website. Um, so that's great. Thank you for walking us through that. That's excellent. So I'm gonna get to that was kind of part of a couple of questions. So that did get to a couple of questions, but I'm gonna go through a few others that people had. Um, there was a question about, I think, Rachel, you mentioned a national turtle data collection group. Someone was wondering what that is.
Yes. So in Ontario, there's like a provincial level data collection, which is the Natural Heritage Information Center. And so, like, as I think James mentioned it already as well, that like anything that's added to iNaturalist can go to these various like provincial or federal centers for information. And one of those is the Natural Heritage Information Center. And historically, anything that's come in through the Adopt a Pond program, at the end of each year, we kind of go through, vet everything, and it's submitted there. So it's not only available to us, but also available to other researchers and people who have gone through proper data privacy training and have approval to use those centers for data requests and can request information on a particular area or anything like that, and then they'll be able to kind of pool all the contributed data from various places to be able to help with that. So that's the one that we use, but there's a lot of different other options for other provinces and at the national level, I believe, as well.
Correct, thanks. That does tie into a question also that just came in about how to make their observations hidden, as you touched on. Several of the Canadian turtles are what are called obscured automatically on iNaturalist because they are at risk of poaching. So there's a list of about 200 species on iNaturalist that are sensitive to collection, poaching, or intentional harm. So those ones, about 200 of those are automatically hidden no matter who makes that observation on iNaturalist for the public to see. And those kind of put a random point within like a 15 by 20 kilometer box. So those really can't be found again. And as you were talking, Rachel, about those data centers, the conservation centers that do get the data, they get access to those true locations where because they are trained in data management and that's what they do. But the public won't see that. Also to mention, if at any time of making an observation, if it's one of these automatically obscured ones, you don't have to check that box or to set that. But for other ones, at any time, whether in the app or on the website, you can choose the location, how your observation is viewed on a naturalist. The default is open. That means the actual true point, like we saw on the map before, someone can zoom right in and see where that is. If you click the drop down option to be obscured, it will then put it in that random point in a large box where people will see that there's an observation there, but it won't show the exact location. And then the third option is making it completely private, which means it just does not map it. So nobody will know you made that observation. It won't show up on iNaturalist. It's okay, great for you to know, but that kind of makes that observation not so valuable for anyone else for conservation work. But that's kind of how those obscuring works. Sorry, so I kind of stole that question. Another question which I thought was great was as you were talking about wildlife crossings and fencing and mitigation for road mortality. When doing that, we're pointing turtles and frogs to a culvert or a crossing under the road. Is there a higher risk of predation that predators will kind of sit and watch that opening?
Yeah, that is a really great question. And that is something that is still not fully known. I think, unfortunately, we're still very new, especially in Ontario, to be using wildlife crossings and mitigation in this way. And so there's still a lot that we're learning about it. But every time that a kind of a major project for road mortality mitigation is being done, people are then kind of looking at like pre and post changes to their movement. Are the individuals or the taxa in the area actually using those pathways? Are they just walking even farther and going around? Are they getting stuck somewhere? And trying to just constantly learn about how to do it better. And so I think we're still getting there. I myself don't know of any particular instances where that has been a problem, but I think it's definitely something that has been acknowledged when doing this kind of mitigation work, and something that people are observing and trying to figure out if it is a problem, and then if it is, kind of what are our next steps for that. But there have been issues where, depending on the way that the fencing is installed, if it's not far enough, it doesn't cover enough area, the individuals might just kind of be moving and going like around it, and then it's kind of creating a secondary hotspot. And so like I said, every time we do, and I say we, but as like conservationists and organizations in Ontario and Canada do these projects, we're learning a little bit more and more to try and improve the next one, or then go back and make changes in order to make it more effective. But yeah, so all that to be said, don't know 100%. And James, if you have anything else to kind of mention to that, feel free. But it is something that is, yeah, we're aware of, and that we're trying to learn a little bit more about.
Yeah, I would echo that. Our turtle work, we've done mitigation of a few hotspots, and in general, we're finding the benefits of avoiding turtle roadkill outweighs the chance of predation in general that we're finding. Yeah. I have a question that could be for either of you. Maybe I'll toss it to Casey first, and then Rachel, you can add something if you like. Somebody's asking if they took a picture of turtle eggs or any observation, back in the summer. Is it too late to submit this to iNaturalist? Is it something that's still valuable? What about if your kid don't know exactly where that was generally?
I would say it's still valuable. I have photos that I've uploaded from 2 years ago. It's still of added use. We still like to know, and we still like to go back and look at trends in iNaturalist. And I think that's the beauty. You can upload things that you've had stuck in your phone for years, and somebody can still use that to kind of inform conservation, to look at how the numbers have changed throughout the years. If you don't really kind of remember the specific place, like Rachel mentioned, your phone sometimes will geotag the location. So if you swipe up on an iPhone or you click the information on a Samsung, it will kind of give you the area or the name of the park you're in. If you're still kind of fuzzy, I would say my best guess is to set a really broad range, and kind of try and remember that day and piece by piece what area you were in, just to kind of give researchers an idea of generally where did you make that observation, and generally where did that turtle lay those eggs. But don't let last year's photos not make it onto iNaturalist because you think they're not valuable.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. And I think too that we often say, especially when we had our app, and that is an option in iNaturalist as well, that even if you don't know exactly what species it is, but you suspect that it is a turtle species, to put it as like you could put it as like kind of more general as turtles and tortoises. And then either people can help you kind of hone down to that specific species, or if not, like even just knowing the presence of a individual or the presence of a nesting in a potentially like general location can be useful for somebody. And so even in our app for a really long time, we said, even if you don't know the exact species, even an unknown turtle observation is still an observation of a turtle and can still be beneficial. Obviously, the more information, the more accurate that information is, the better. But something you could always also do is, if you're uploading from the past and you have a general idea of where it is, but you don't know the exact specific location, you can also kind of add in the notes and in your kind of general comments as well that, that there maybe was not the exact location not known, but in this general area, just so if anybody is using that data at a later date, that they can help, it can help them kind of, figure that out and understand the quality and the level of quality for that data.
Great. And yeah, you'd want to make sure that you put the date of the observation of when you were there, not today's date, right? And this, just so people know that was in the past, because there have been observations that are submitted. And it looks the date's winter time, but actually that was a submitted date, not the time you took the photo. which iNaturalist generally will pull that directly from your photo properties, but sometimes it doesn't. Which actually ties to another question that someone says, if there's a glitch in that, how do you change that? And that can be done either at the time of making the observation. So you can, if the date doesn't show up properly in the date field, it'll ask, I think the field just says date. You just tap on that or click on that, whether you're on the website or the app, and you can select the date from a calendar. You can also do it after the fact by going back to your observation, you tap or click the edit button, and you can change the date at any point, at any time for any of your observations. An interesting question. Someone was wondering, what do the turtle nest cages protect the eggs from?
I can jump in there if you're okay with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so those are turtle nest protectors is typically what we call them. But yeah, these cages help protect against predators digging up those nests. So especially in Ontario, natural and then also subsidized predators, especially in urban areas, are a really huge risk to turtle survival. And less than 1% of all the eggs that are laid by turtles in Ontario survive to be a mature adult. And for some species, maturity can be anywhere from 10 years of age to 20 years of age, depending on that species. And so it's that a very critical point of time in their life stages is just surviving between the time that the eggs are laid to the time that they hatch. Turtles don't provide parental care like many other species. They don't sit there and protect their nests. It's not necessarily as safe for them to be out of the water for long periods of time. So they come, they lay their eggs, and then they head back to the water. And so being able to provide that little bit of extra protection, especially in areas where nest predation is really high, especially urban areas or where there's, the nest might be a little bit more at risk, like on, sides of roads and things like that. It's nice to have that extra protection just to give them that little extra chance of survival. Some of the predators that might dig them up are things, raccoons, really, really bad ones, foxes, minks, all of those kind of little species that are very opportunistic in their feeding and will kind of just wander around and look for something. And often kind of sometimes even just sit and wait for the turtles to finish nesting before they go and dig those up right away. So even being able to find a nest, know where it is, and be able to protect it is hard. But be able to do that is just kind of a good way to give them a little bit extra protection. And it's not 100%. Sometimes they still dig around them. Sometimes it's also you need permission to put certain types of nest protectors in certain areas, especially on non-private land. So it's not always an option, but whenever it is, we like to encourage people to do so. And just a little plug for CWF is that they have really great resources on their websites for how to build nest protectors. So if that is something you're interested in, you can kind of do some searching there. We also have some information on the Adopt a Pond website through the Toronto Zoo website as well, if you want any more information about why to protect a nest and how to protect a nest as well.
Great. Thanks so much. I think that kind of wraps it up. There was one last question that I might just touch on real quick. Does the potential of adding audio to an observation doesn't work so well for turtles. They're pretty quiet. But for frog calls, for sure, you can record a sound and upload it the same way you would upload a photo. There's no sound recognition software in iNaturalist, so it won't give you a species ID based on sound. But each frog will make a different distinctive call that experts could identify it by. So
yeah, and
to
add on to that as well is that it was a previous feature in our app that you could go through and see some of those or have those audio calls examples of those built into the app, but we still have that all available on our website as well. So even if it's not recognizing that through iNaturalist, you can always head over to the Adopt a Pond website, which is just Adopt a Pond at Toronto Zoo. And you can go through, we have a virtual species guides and all of that information is there. So you can learn a little bit more about that that way too. So if that ends up being helpful at any time, that's there.
Great. Thanks so much, Rachel and Acacia, for presenting. Super useful information. Great presentations, and thanks to everybody else for joining as well. Hope it was valuable and that you learned a lot. And as mentioned at the beginning, for those who may have joined later, this was recorded. It'll be up on our website at CWF, Google CWF webinars. But if you've registered to the webinar, you will also receive a copy in a few days with a link to the recording. So you can share it around, feel free, spread the word. And again, yeah, thank you to everybody for participating and our great speakers. And we'll see you at the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.